Now, many people have asked, why is Usopp such a bum? Why has Elbaf not been his arc? Why has Usopp done nothing? Why does Usopp not use Haki? Why is he essentially worthless to the Straw Hat crew? Why is Usopp all of these things? Well, I posit to you this day the reason why, and it is because his heritage has not been revealed. So, let's look at Usopp's lineage. We have Usopp himself. He's a liar, and he is the sharpshooter for the Straw Hats, and he is, like I said, specifically known for his lying. However, he does kind of like lock in at times. Now then we have his father Usopp. Usopp is also a sharpshooter for the Red Hair Pirates. And we see throughout he is kind of skeptical ethical nature, because I mean he did leave Usopp's dying mom to go pirate around, but that was his dream and she kind of like was allowed him to go do it. But he also abandoned his child and refused to go meet his child once again at Wano when he had the chance to. So we see all of these negative things surrounding the life of the Usopp, I guess the Sop family. So with all of this, it kind of accumulates to them being predominantly just kind of bummy. Now we may think, yo, he just got it from his dad. Honestly, just being a bum is in the blood. However, I believe that there may be something else within the blood. So, like I said, you got Yasopp and then Usopp. Now, if we take a glance here, we see something at the end of those names. Sop. S-O-P-P. Now, you know what I call that right there? Patrilineal name connection. And you know what also has Sop in the end? Aesop. Aesop the liar. Usopp has the will of D passed down from generation to generation through his patrilineal line of succession. So, Aesop, let's look at this guy. Okay, so let's see. Okay, all right. Aesop, slave, he lived in like the 620 BC to like the 560s BC, presumably, and he is known most widely for his fables. Aesop's fables, you've heard them. The tortoise and the hare, the fox and the grapes, the boy who cried wolf. You know who also cried wolf consistently and was what he was known for in his village, in Syrup Village? Usopp. Usopp cried wolf. Now, if this theory is true, Usopp has the blood relation. He's just fulfilling the tales of his great ancestor. So, though, I mean, technically he didn't cry wolf, he cried pirate and cried for a cat-like pirate. However, he did cry wolf in the figurative way. So, we got all this. Now, Usopp, Yasopp, Usopp is on the crew of the freest individual of all time, or who will become the freest individual, Nika. He is a member of Nika's crew. However, Nika is not at his freest at the moment. Nika is, as we've seen in the most recent chapters, limited. He is unable to be as free as possible, and that's why he's getting beat, absolutely dog-walked by Emu. However, look at this. Aesop, look at Aesop. Aesop was a slave. Aesop was a slave, and he lived a slave for his entire life. And you know what would absolutely obliterate slavery? You know what would be the completion of a family line which had been a slave for the entirety of their life? Not necessarily a slave to a certain individual, as Aesop was. However, a slave to certain burdens, a slave to lying, a slave to telling a tale. You know what is known for breaking stuff? Hammers. You know who's a hammer? Ragnar. Usopp, through not necessarily metaphysical, but like a metaphorical way of breaking the chains which his ancestors have been burdened by for generation upon generation, will pick up Ragnar and allow Nika to become his freest form. This show of strength, this feat of pure will by Usopp, will allow Nika, Luffy, to become his freest form and obliterate Emu. We see Loki's out for the count right now. Usopp, he's still fine. He's relatively chilling. So, who's to say? Ragnar's just sitting right there. Ragnar's legit, like, sitting on top of Loki right now like he's a bench or something. So, who's to say he doesn't get up off that bench when he sees his master, the one who can break chains? He knows that Usopp can wield him to break the chains which would cause him to suffer, and to break the chains on the sun god, who who, okay, oh, sorry. Who Ragnar fought against back in the days. Ragnar knows that Nika is the freest. And, however, he's seen Luffy. He's disgusted by Luffy. Well, I don't think he can't that, but he's disgusted by Luffy, disgusted by this falsified form of Nika. And to recreate his infamous rival, he will ensure, just to rebuild his pride and to once again experience the thrill of battle, will break the chains through the vessel that is Usopp to acquire a freest Nika. So, we see all this, and like I said, just kind of a further connection. Aesop, fable. Aesop's fables. You know what fables are? They're lies, tales, whimsical little whispers that float through your head with airy fantasy, however they mean nothing. And we see that Aesop, like I said, though he held fables, these were stories. He created stories. And you know who's consistently creating stories? Usopp. Usopp is creating stories. What if he writes the story? What if he creates what Luffy will become? What if he changes destiny? What if Luffy cannot improve himself at all at this moment? But Usopp, even if he doesn't use Ragnar, will be the one to write history, to write Luffy's story, write Luffy's destiny, so that he can overcome Imu. Because, who's to say? Aesop, he was ancient. He was super ancient. You know who else was ancient? Nika. You know who else was also ancient? Joy Boy. You know what fruit Joy Boy had? The Nika fruit. So, who is to say? We've seen historians on other pirate crews, and I mean, heck, if the foundational pirate crew didn't have like every office that a pirate crew would have, how would those other offices come to be? Like, who's gonna make a random office that the original pirate didn't have? So, with this, who's to say that Aesop wasn't the historian on Joy Boy's crew? Aesop the liar, or Aesop the writer. Now, who's to say that he didn't help to write the story of Joy Boy, ensure that the story of Joy Boy lasted throughout the centuries? What if Aesop the liar wrote the poneglyphs? What if he ensured that Joy Boy would live on for generation to generation? And now his will, through the will of the liar specifically, has been passed down all the way to Usopp, so that now Usopp will be able to control the narrative, write Luffy's tale, and ensure that Luffy does not die out here, does not die by getting absolutely dog-walked and penetrated by two blades, obliterated by Imu, his memory erased. Usopp steps up to the plate and ensures that the tale of Luffy does not die. It does not disappear. It does not fade like the tale of Joy Boy. He becomes the greatest writer of narratives, the greatest changer of destiny. Well, not changer of destiny, but like, I guess, author of destiny through his heritage. I mean, oh my gosh, we know it's heritage piece. We've seen it everywhere. You know who's one of the most powerful people? Garp. You know who has one of the most powerful grandkids? Garp. You know who is esteemed as being one of the more powerful individuals, though probably not super high, well, not most certainly not super high anymore. Garling. You know who has one of the most powerful kids, arguably like top 5 in the verse? Garling. Shanks, obviously. So, it is not unlikely that Usopp has this big distant ancestor, Aesop. It's Aesop, guys, trust. Aesop has passed down his, I guess, genes, his dino DNA, all the way down to Usopp, so that now Usopp can triumph over all. He can change the will of fate. He becomes the daggum harpies, the daggum fates. Harpies don't control fate. The Furies? No. Never mind. So, now Usopp is going to control it all. Usopp is going to create the narrative and is going to be the reason why Luffy achieves his freest form. We don't know what that will be through. We don't know if maybe he's going to free Luffy in just some very odd, unexpected way. However, Usopp will be the reason why the story of Luffy does not end here. He will do it by either picking up Ragnar or writing the story himself, doing something which is so impactful that Luffy gains the will to live, continue on. But we will see it. For Usopp, it is his arc. Elbaf is the arc of Usopp, and Usopp will now take part in the genealogical gifts which he has been granted from his father and his fathers before him, and then Aesop before all of them, because he is the greatest and the most foundational narrative teller in all of One Piece. And we will see this because Oda Oda was thinking up here. His cranium, it was running circles, and he will ensure that Aesop comes full circle, and he will bring freedom to the entire world of One Piece, the Grand Line, the New World, all of it. But yeah, so there is my theory. Not theory, straight truth. So think of it what you will, do with it what you will, and thank you very much for watching.